Welcome back to ChessBox Worldwide. Tonight we shall be enjoying the game which made Hesham Abdelrahman a grandmaster, and this was played during the 2016 African Individual Chess Championships. These took place in Uganda. Expect fireworks in this game. About the players: Hesham Abdelrahman earned the FIDE Master title in 2009 and the International Master title IM in 2013. He had represented Egypt in the Chess Olympiads before 2016. Two of which one was the 2016 Chess Olympiad in Baku, Azerbaijan, while Ssegwanyi was awarded the title of International Master IM by FIDE in 2015, and this was a direct result of winning the Zone 4.2 Individual Championship in the same year. This victory in the 2015 Zone 4.2 Individual Championship also qualified him to play in the FIDE World Cup in 2015. In this event, he was notably paired against the 4th seed in the world, Grandmaster Anish Giri, and Arthur drew the first game in 158 moves before losing the second game and being eliminated from the tournament. Ssegwanyi had played for the Ugandan team in the Chess Olympiad since 2012. His participation before 2016, this included the Istanbul Olympiad 2012, the Tromsø Olympiad in 2014. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the center of African chess. And in the white pieces, Grandmaster Hesham Abdelrahman opened the game with 1d4. And we see knight f6 from Ssegwanyi. c4 trying to take control of the center. e6 trying to stop the dominancy of white in the center. Knight f3 and we see d5. This brings us the queen's gambit declined. So it's knight c3 developing the piece, and in this position we see bishop b4. Bishop comes to g5, h6 hitting on the bishop. GM went on to just take the knight, but however, in case of bishop h4, then we would say d takes c4, and after f3 hitting on a bishop, bishop takes c3, b takes c3, knight b d7, knight d2 hitting on the pawn which is on c4, and after b5, f4 hitting on the pawn. s6 is out of the question because of a takes pawn on b5, pawn on s6 can't take the pawn because of the pin. c6 could be played, and after e4 hitting on the center, e5 challenging the center, d5, and after c takes d5, e takes d5, queen c7 moving away from the pin, and now d6 would be played, and after queen takes d6, a takes b5, short castling, bishop takes c4. Black has 2 pawn islands and white has so many hanging pawns. For example, all these pawns and the bishop which is on c4 are hung and can be targeted in the future. So this one gives black a potential and simple game to play, because now in this position bishop b7 could be anticipated, putting an eye on the pawn which is on g2. Let's go back. After h6, that's why in this position GM just decided to go on and play bishop takes knight on f6, and after queen takes f6 we see e3 trying to open up for the white bishop, c5, and after c takes d5 hitting on the center, e takes d5. This opens up for the bishop. Now in this position queen b3 or bishop comes to b5. These are good moves, but however, he played bishop b5 first, check, and after bishop d7, queen a4. Now he's very ready to take the bishop. s6 challenging the bishop, bishop takes d7, knight takes d7, and in this position, short castling was played by GM. In this position, Ssegwanyi went on and played b5, but however, bishop takes c3 should have been considered. For example, after bishop takes c3, would see b takes c3, b5 hitting on the queen, queen c2, short castling, then we see f4, c4, and after h3, we see queen comes to c6, rook goes on to b1, rook b8, and after a takes b5, a takes b5. At least this would still keep the game very equal and could be played. But however, after a short castling, he played b5, which was an inaccuracy, and in this position, Grandmaster first of all played knight takes b5. Remember, the pawn can't take the knight because the queen will be winning the rook, which is on a8. So that's why in this position, queen c6 should have been considered. For example, after queen c6, pinning down the knight, knight goes back on c3, queen takes f4, knight takes f4, c4. This gives black a playable position. But however, after knight b5, he played knight b6, and in this position, GM Abdelrahman Hesham played knight c7 check. Double check knight and the queen, and also putting an eye on the rook. So king comes to d8, and after queen c2, rearranging the forces, king takes c7. He played d takes c5, but however, f3 should have been given greater effort. After f3, bishop would reach on f5, and then queen can win the pawn, which is on c5, hitting back on the bishop, which is on f5. But however, he played d takes c5. I am Arthur Ssegwanyi played knight c4, a very powerful move in the position. For example, in this position, he went on to play f3. But for example, in case of b3, then we could see knight a3, we're attacking the queen, and after queen d3, rook would come to d8, defending the pawn. After rook c1, the game can play on accordingly. But however, after knight c4, GM Abraham played b3, and bishop takes pawn should have been considered. For example, in this position, in case of bishop takes c5, we would play b3. Queen b2 is a move to consider for black. Let's go back. After f3, I am Arthur played queen takes c2, giving back the bishop, which is on b4. GM Abraham didn't even bother to take the bishop on b4. He played queen f5, and this position, queen f6 should have been considered, but however, I am Arthur going to save his material, and he played knight takes a3. In this position, the pawn which is on f7 is hanging, but even he didn't bother to take the pawn. He brought in another attacking piece. He played knight e5, absolutely the best move in the position. Rook c8 should have been considered. In case of f6, this can be checkmate in 2. For example, after queen d7 check, king b8, knight c6 is a checkmate. Let's go back. After knight e5, he played rook e8, and this was an inaccuracy because queen d7 could be checkmate in 2, but GM went on for the further route. He played queen takes f7 check. All the squares where the king can move up have been covered, so the king is forced to go down. So king b8. So he didn't even bother to take the rook, which was hanging on e8. He played knight d7 check, and after king b7, knight moves out and discovering a check on the king. King comes c6. In this position, he played queen d7 check, checking the king, and the king is forced to take only one pawn. He plays in this position. I am Arthur Ssegwanyi played king takes c5, and after knight f4 check, forking the king and the queen. In this position, I am Arthur Ssegwanyi immediately resigned in the game, and GM Abraham won the game. Thank you so much, and I wish you the best of luck in your games.